It's the story no one saw coming, a financial bombshell hidden in plain sight within the public records of Coconino County, Arizona. For years, viewers of Sister Wives have watched the drama unfold, the family splinter, and the finances become a central point of contention. But through it all, one thing seems certain. The million-dollar fortress, the so-called Shira Chateau, where Kody and Robyn Brown reside with their children, was the one stable asset in a sea of chaos. We were led to believe it was their rock, their safe harbor. Today, we have uncovered evidence that suggests that rock is crumbling into sand. A search of official county records has unearthed a document that could signal the end of an era for the Brown family. It's a notice of default, the first legal step toward foreclosure, filed by a major national bank against Kody and Robyn Brown for a staggering $250,000 loan taken against their home. This isn't speculation. It's a hard news story backed by public documents, and it paints a picture of extreme financial distress that starkly contradicts the lavish lifestyle portrayed on our screens. The family home is officially at risk. Before we dive into the shocking details of this official document, the timeline of reckless spending, and what our inside sources are saying about the family being kept in the dark, make sure you are subscribed to COCO Gossip. Click that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more exclusive deep dives into the stories that reality TV doesn't want you to see. And if you're as shocked by this revelation as we are, hit that like button to let us know. Now, let's get into the evidence. The document at the heart of this investigation is officially filed with the Coconino County Recorder's Office. It is a public record, available for anyone with the diligence to look. The document is titled Notice of Default and Election to Sell under Deed of Trust. For those unfamiliar with real estate law, this is the legal shot across the bow. It's the bank's formal declaration that a borrower has stopped paying their debt and that the foreclosure process has now officially begun. The document, which we have reviewed, is chilling in its sterile legal language. It names Kody Brown and Robyn Brown as the truster, the legal term for the borrowers. It lists the property address, the sprawling 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom home in Flagstaff that has become the backdrop for the show's most recent and tumultuous seasons. And then it details the debt. The document specifies that the default is on a home equity line of credit, or HELOC, in the original principal amount of $250,000. $250,000. Let that number sink in for a moment. This is not their primary mortgage. This is a secondary loan, a massive line of credit they took out using the equity in their home as collateral. The notice states that the borrowers are in breach of their contract due to failure to make monthly payments as required by the promissory note. The document was filed by a trustee on behalf of one of the largest banking institutions in the United States, indicating this is not some small private lender who might be flexible. This is a corporate giant with a well-oiled legal machine for repossessing properties. To understand the gravity of the situation, you first need to understand what a HELOC is and why taking one out, especially of this magnitude, is a significant financial gamble. A home equity line of credit is essentially a giant credit card secured by your house. Homeowners with substantial equity, the difference between what the home is worth and what is owed on the primary mortgage, can borrow against that equity. It can be a useful tool for things like major home renovations that increase the property's value, consolidating high-interest debt, or covering a genuine, unforeseen emergency like catastrophic medical bills. However, it is also a notoriously dangerous tool when used to fund a lifestyle. When you use a HELOC for vacations, luxury cars, designer handbags, or other consumer goods, you are converting the solid, stable value of your home into fleeting, depreciating assets. You are, quite literally, spending your house. And because the loan is secured by the property itself, the stakes are infinitely higher than with a regular credit card. If you default on a Visa bill, you get collection calls and a hit to your credit score. If you default on a HELOC, the bank can and will take your home. This brings us to the most damning part of our investigation, the timeline. We cross-referenced the public records to pinpoint when Kody and Robyn took out this massive $250,000 line of credit. The deed of trust for the HELOC was recorded in mid-2022. Now, let's consider what was happening around that time and in the months that followed, as chronicled by the show and the family's own social media. This was not a period of austerity or emergency. In fact, it was quite the opposite. This was a period marked by significant non-essential expenditures. Viewers will recall discussions of lavish holiday celebrations and the purchasing of high-end gifts. More significantly, this time frame aligns with a period where Robyn was seen on social media and in the show wearing new, expensive-looking jewelry, including pieces that sparked considerable discussion among fans for their apparent cost. Kody, meanwhile, continued to drive a late-model sports car, an expensive hobby in itself, and was reportedly spending considerable sums on his collection of firearms and other personal interests. There were no major renovations reported on the Flagstaff home that would justify a $250,000 expenditure. There was no family-wide medical crisis that we are aware of. There was no major investment in a business that would promise a return. Instead, the evidence points to a massive infusion of cash that appears to have been used to maintain a certain standard of living, a standard of living that was perhaps no longer sustainable on their TLC income alone, especially as the family's earning power fractured with the departure of Christine and later Janelle and Meri. The HELOC, it appears, was not a lifeline for an emergency. It was a slush fund to prop up a facade. The facade began to crack when the payments stopped. According to the notice of default, the delinquency date was several months ago, meaning they have missed multiple consecutive payments. This isn't a case of one forgotten check. This is a pattern of non-payment that was serious enough for the bank to initiate formal legal proceedings. And what were Kody and Robyn doing during this period of default? The spending didn't appear to slow down. Recent episodes and social media posts from just before the default notice was filed show Robyn continuing to purchase expensive home decor items and designer accessories. It suggests a complete disconnect from their financial reality, or perhaps a desperate last hurrah of spending before the inevitable collapse. They were spending money on luxury goods while the legal paperwork that threatened to take their home was being drafted and filed. To provide context for our viewers, we spoke to a real estate finance expert, a specialist in foreclosure law in Arizona, who agreed to comment on the condition of anonymity to avoid any professional conflict. Let's call him Mr. Davis. According to Mr. Davis, the filing of a notice of default is the point of no return in many ways. In Arizona, he explained, this is the first public step in a non-judicial foreclosure. Once this notice is recorded, a 90-day clock starts ticking. This is called the reinstatement period. The borrowers have 90 days to cure the default, which means paying all the missed payments plus late fees, legal fees, and any other penalties the bank levies. It's not just about catching up on one payment. It's about making the bank whole for the entire cost of the default process up to that point. When we asked what happens if they cannot come up with the funds within those 90 days, his answer was stark. If they can't reinstate the loan, Mr. Davis continued, the trustee can schedule a trustee's sale. A date will be set, and the property will be auctioned off to the highest bidder on the courthouse steps. From the moment that auction is complete, the property belongs to the new owner, and the Browns would be considered tenants at sufferance. If they don't vacate willingly, the new owner would have to initiate eviction proceedings, which could result in the sheriff physically removing them and their belongings from the home. The consequences, he stressed, extend far beyond just losing the house. A foreclosure is a catastrophic event for your credit. It will stay on your credit report for 7 years, and it absolutely decimates your credit score. We're talking a drop of 100 to 200 points, easily. Getting any kind of loan in the future, a car loan, another mortgage, even a credit card, would be next to impossible for a very long time. It's a financial scarlet letter. But perhaps the most shocking part of this entire story is the secrecy. Our investigation included reaching out to sources with close ties to the Brown family, individuals who have known them for years and have insight into the family's complex dynamics. What they revealed is a pattern of deliberate concealment. According to 2 separate sources, none of the other family members, not Janelle, not Meri, and certainly not the adult children, were aware of this $250,000 HELOC. They were led to believe that the primary mortgage on the home was the only major debt against the property. The family's collective assets, particularly the shared land at Coyote Pass, have been a source of constant debate and argument. The OG wives, especially Janelle, have poured their own money into the family pot for years, with the expectation of one day building on that land. The revelation that Kody and Robyn secretly leveraged their own home to the hilt pulling out $250,000 in cash for their own use, is seen as the ultimate betrayal. One source told us, Janelle would be absolutely floored but not surprised. This is exactly the kind of financial secrecy that drove her away. She always suspected that money was being funneled to support Robyn's lifestyle, but this is on a whole other level. To find out they took on that much debt against the home while Coyote Pass sits empty and undeveloped? It's a slap in the face to everyone who sacrificed for the family vision. The source continued, think about it. That $250,000 could have paid for the infrastructure at Coyote Pass. It could have put in the water, the sewer, the electricity. It could have given Janelle and Meri a chance to build and own something tangible. Instead, it appears to have been spent on things that have no value, and now the bank is coming to collect. This is the reckoning. This is the moment where the on-screen narrative of a struggling but unified family collides with the harsh reality of legal documents and financial consequences. For years, Kody Brown has positioned himself as the patriarch, the leader, the one making the tough financial decisions for the good of the entire family. This notice of default shatters that image completely. It reveals a pattern of reckless financial mismanagement, a prioritization of one wife's comfort over the collective good, and a level of secrecy that is toxic to any family, let alone one as complex as this. The decision to take out such a massive loan and the subsequent failure to pay it back is not just a private financial matter. It is a direct contradiction of the values they claim to uphold. It demonstrates a profound lack of foresight and responsibility, risking the very roof over the heads of their minor children, Dayton, Aurora, Brianna, Solomon, and Ariella. These children are the innocent victims in a financial crisis created by their parents. They face the instability and trauma of a potential foreclosure and eviction because of decisions they had no part in, and for Janelle Brown, this news, however devastating for the family as a whole, serves as the ultimate validation. Her decision to legally and financially separate herself from Kody was a move born of self-preservation. She saw the writing on the wall, she saw the financial priorities shifting, the resources being consolidated under one roof while her own future remained uncertain. By refusing to commingle her finances further, by investing in her RV, and by focusing on her own financial stability, she unknowingly saved herself from this catastrophe. Had she remained in a spiritually bound financial partnership with Kody and Robyn, this default could have had ripple effects on her own credit and financial standing. She didn't just escape an unhappy marriage, though. She escaped a sinking financial ship just as the alarms were beginning to sound. This notice of default is not just a legal document, it's proof that Janelle's intuition was correct. The family's finances were not being managed for the benefit of the whole, they were being drained to support the desires of a select few. The patriarch had lost control, and the kingdom was and is on the brink of collapse. The implications of this default are vast and will undoubtedly reverberate through every aspect of the Browns' lives, including the future of the show itself. How can a family whose central premise is built on their unique lifestyle and family structure continue to film when their primary residence is in foreclosure? It raises serious questions about their viability as reality television subjects and the sustainability of their income. Let's delve deeper into the numbers. The Flagstaff home was purchased in 2019 for approximately $890,000. They put down a significant down payment, which is where the initial equity came from. Over the next few years, the real estate market in Flagstaff, like in many places, saw significant appreciation. It's this paper gain in value that likely allowed them to qualify for such a large HELOC. The bank saw the increased value of the home and deemed it sufficient collateral to lend against. However, Kody and Robyn seem to have treated this paper equity as liquid cash, a fundamental misunderstanding of personal finance. Home equity is not an ATM. It is the bedrock of a family's financial stability. By extracting $250,000 and allegedly spending it on consumer goods, they essentially stripped their home's financial armor, leaving it vulnerable. Now, consider their income. The primary source of income for Kody and Robyn is the salary they receive from TLC for filming Sister Wives. While the exact figures are not public, television industry experts estimate that the family collectively earns between $25,000 and $40,000 per episode. With the family now fractured, it's widely believed that the salary pool is split, with Kody and Robyn receiving one share and Christine, Janelle, and Meri receiving their own individual shares for their participation. This means Kody and Robyn's income has effectively been reduced, even if the show's overall budget remains the same. Furthermore, Robyn's online jewelry business, My Sister Wife's Closet, has been largely defunct for years, generating little to no income. Kody has no other discernible job outside of the show, so they are living on a fixed and likely reduced income while their expenses, including the mortgage on $1 million home and now a massive HELOC payment, have ballooned. It's a classic recipe for financial disaster, shrinking income and expanding debt. The default notice also forces us to re-examine key moments from the show with a new, more critical lens. Think back to every conversation about money. Remember the intense emotional arguments over the Coyote Pass property. Kody was adamant, almost frantic, about the need for all the wives to pay off their shares of the land. He publicly shamed Christine for using money from the sale of her home to buy a house in Utah, rather than turning it over to him for the family pot. He has consistently pressured Janelle to sell her fifth-wheel trailer and contribute her resources. All of this was framed as a leader trying to rally his family toward a common goal. But now, with the knowledge of this secret $250,000 debt, his motivations look entirely different. Was his desperation to get cash from the other wives not about funding the development of Coyote Pass, but about funding the payments on his and Robyn's secret line of credit? Was he trying to use the OG wives' money to plug the holes in his and Robyn's personal financial dike? This theory, which is now circulating among close observers of the family, would recontextualize years of on-screen conflict. It would mean that Kody wasn't just being a poor leader, he was being actively deceptive, using the dream of Coyote Pass as a cover story to demand funds to service his and Robyn's private debt. This also shines a new light on Robyn's constant expressions of anxiety and fear. For seasons, viewers have seen Robyn cry about financial instability, about the fear of moving, about wanting a permanent home for her children. On the surface, it appeared to be the trauma of a woman who had experienced instability in the past. But what if it was something more? What if her anxiety wasn't just a generalized fear, but the very specific, very real anxiety of someone who knows they are living far beyond their means? What if her tears were not just about emotional security, but about the terrifying knowledge that they had taken on a mountain of debt that they couldn't possibly repay without the full financial support of the other wives? Wives they were actively alienating? This insider theory suggests that Robyn's on-screen persona as the fragile, anxious wife may have been a cover for the cold, hard reality of their dire financial situation. She wasn't just worried about the family falling apart. She was terrified of the financial house of cards she and Kody had built coming crashing down. Let's explore the legal pathway forward for them. As our expert Mr. Davis explained, they have a 90-day window to cure the default. To do this, they would need a sudden, massive infusion of cash. Where could this money possibly come from? They could try to sell assets, but what assets do they have? Kody's sports car and gun collection would not fetch anywhere near the amount needed. Their most significant asset, aside from the house itself, is their portion of the Coyote Pass land. Could they sell their parcels of land? This would be a logistical and legal nightmare. The property is co-owned by multiple members of the now estranged family. Janelle and Meri would have to agree to any sale, and it's highly unlikely they would do so just to bail out Kody and Robyn, especially given the secretive nature of the debt. Furthermore, selling raw, undeveloped land is a slow process. It is not a quick way to generate the kind of cash they need within a 90-day window. Another option could be bankruptcy. Filing for Chapter 13. Bankruptcy could put an automatic stay on the foreclosure proceedings, giving them time to reorganize their finances and propose a repayment plan to the court. However, this is a drastic and public measure. A bankruptcy filing would become a public record, a permanent stain on their reputation, and would likely provide an explosive storyline for the show, one that would be deeply humiliating. It would require them to disclose every single aspect of their finances to a court-appointed trustee, laying bare the full extent of their mismanagement for the world to see. It's a last resort, and one that Kody's pride might not allow him to take. The most likely and perhaps most tragic scenario is that they will be forced to sell the house. They could try to list the property on the open market in what is known as a short sale, where the bank agrees to let them sell the house for less than the total amount owed on both the mortgage and the HELOC. This would avoid the public spectacle of an auction, but it is still a significant financial blow and a public admission of failure. They would walk away with nothing, and their credit would still be severely damaged. If the market has softened in Flagstaff, they might not even be able to sell it for enough to cover the primary mortgage, let alone the HELOC. This would put them in an even worse position. The bank could still come after them for the deficiency, the difference between what the house sells for and what they owe. This is the hard reality that is not seen on the television show. Behind the curated scenes of family discussions and emotional confessions is a real-world financial crisis with devastating consequences. The Shira Chateau, which was so contentiously acquired and became a symbol of the shifting family dynamics and Kody's favoritism, is now a symbol of their downfall. The very thing that Robyn believed would give her and her children permanent security has become the anchor that is dragging them under. The irony is staggering. The pursuit of this one perfect oversized home at the expense of the family's broader financial health and cohesion has led directly to a situation where they might lose it all. This investigation proves that the fractures in the Brown family were not just emotional and spiritual, they were financial. And the cracks have now become a chasm so deep that the very foundation of Kody and Robyn's life in Flagstaff is on the verge of collapsing into it. The foreclosure watch has begun, and for the Brown family, the clock is ticking. The fallout from this financial bombshell extends beyond legal and economic consequences. It cuts to the very heart of the family's narrative and Kody's role as the patriarch. For over a decade, Kody Brown has sold himself to the world and to his own family as a leader guided by Providence, a man with a vision for a sprawling, self-sufficient dynasty on Coyote Pass. This notice of default is a public refutation of that entire persona. It exposes a man not of vision, but of vanity, a leader not of a family, but of a faction, a patriarch not building a legacy, but presiding over its liquidation. The discovery of this secret $250,000 HELOC forces a reevaluation of his every action and motivation in recent years. It suggests that while he was preaching fiscal responsibility and shared sacrifice to his other wives, he and his favored wife were privately and recklessly spending the future. Let's dissect the hypocrisy further. Consider the narrative Kody has pushed regarding Christine and Janelle's financial independence. He has repeatedly framed their decisions to separate their finances as acts of betrayal against the whole family. He lamented Christine's financial departure as a selfish move that hurt the collective. He has expressed frustration and anger at Janelle for investing in her own security with her RV rather than pouring every last cent into the family's communal and ultimately Kody-controlled accounts. Now, with the revelation of this secret debt, his outrage seems less like the plea of a betrayed patriarch and more like the desperate cry of a Ponzi schemer whose investors are pulling out. He wasn't angry because they were breaking up the family. He was angry because they were cutting off the cash flow that was propping up his and Robyn's unsustainable lifestyle. This insider theory, which is gaining significant traction, posits that Kody and Robyn saw the other wives' earnings not as their own, but as subsidiary income streams meant to service the debt and expenses of the primary household, their household. Once those streams dried up, the financial reality of their situation became untenable, leading directly to the HELOC and the subsequent default. We must also consider the psychological impact on Robyn. Throughout the series, she has cultivated an image of herself as a loyal, obedient wife, a victim of the other wives' jealousy and the family's instability. She has frequently spoken of her rental trauma and her deep-seated need for a permanent, stable home where she could feel safe. This narrative is now profoundly complicated. How can one claim to be a victim of instability while actively participating in a financial gamble that is the very definition of creating instability? Taking out a $250,000 line of credit to fund a lifestyle is not the action of a person seeking security. It is the action of a person prioritizing short-term gratification over long-term stability. This raises a difficult question. Was Robyn a knowing and willing co-conspirator in this financial mismanagement? Or was she a clueless participant, simply signing the papers Kody put in front of her? Given her on-screen involvement in major financial decisions, including the purchase of the Flagstaff home and her vocal opinions on the family's budget, the latter seems unlikely. It is more plausible that she was a full partner in this decision. The desire to maintain the Shira chateau and the lifestyle it represented may have been so powerful that it led them both to make a catastrophically poor decision. The very home she saw as her sanctuary, the fortress that would protect her from the trauma of her past, has become a gilded cage, its bars forged from debt and its lock held by the bank. Her quest for external validation through material possessions and a grand home has led her to the brink of losing everything. This is a tragedy of her own making, a classic cautionary tale of wanting it all and, in the process, risking it all. Now, let's turn our attention to the other wives, the OG3, and what this means for them. For Christine, living her best life in Utah with her new husband, David Woolley, this news must feel like a distant echo of a life she thankfully escaped. Christine's journey has been one of reclaiming her independence and finding a partner who values and respects her. She is in a financially stable, emotionally fulfilling relationship. The contrast between her current reality and the chaos unfolding in Flagstaff could not be more stark. This news serves as the final, definitive confirmation that her decision to leave was not just the right choice, but a life-saving one. It proves that the family she left behind was not a viable entity, but a financial black hole, and had she stayed, her own hard-earned resources would have inevitably been sucked into it. For Meri Brown, the situation is more complex and in many ways more poignant. While she is also separated from Kody, her financial entanglements with the family, particularly concerning Coyote Pass, may be deeper. For years, Meri contributed financially, often earning a significant income from her LuLaRoe business, much of which went into the family pot. The news that Kody and Robyn secretly leveraged their own property for a massive personal loan, while her own investment in Coyote Pass languished, must be a particularly bitter pill to swallow. It represents the ultimate transactional nature of her relationship with Kody and Robyn. They were happy to take her money for the family, but they were unwilling to include her in major financial decisions that impacted the family's overall stability. It underscores her status as an outsider, a financial resource to be tapped, but not a partner to be consulted. Meri's journey forward will involve the difficult process of extricating herself fully from this financial web, a task made all the more urgent by this revelation. And then there is Janelle. Of all the wives, Janelle has always been the most pragmatic, the most financially astute, and the most focused on the long-term vision of Coyote Pass. Her frustration and heartbreak over the years have stemmed directly from Kody's inability to execute that vision. This HELOC default is the final, brutal answer to the question she has been asking for years. Where did all the money go? It went to fund Kody and Robyn's lifestyle. It went to new jewelry and expensive toys. It was converted from shared family equity into private, personal consumption. Janelle's decision to buy the RV and live on the land was a radical act of financial independence. It was a declaration that she would no longer wait for Kody to build her future. She would build it herself. This news validates that decision 1,000 times over. She is the one who has a home, free and clear, that no bank can take. She has her own income and her own assets shielded from the impending financial implosion in Flagstaff. In the court of public opinion, Janelle has won. She has been proven to be the wise, responsible one who saw the iceberg ahead and got into a lifeboat, while the captain of the ship was busy rearranging the deck chairs in the first-class lounge. What does this mean for the future of Sister Wives? The show is at a crossroads. It can no longer maintain the pretense of being about a functioning plural family. The narrative has irrevocably shifted. This foreclosure crisis has the potential to become the central storyline of the next season, should it go forward, but it would be a very different show. It would be a show about financial ruin, public humiliation, and the real-world consequences of the choices we have seen them make over the past decade. It's possible that TLC could intervene, offering a financial bailout in exchange for exclusive filming rights to the entire sordid affair. This would be a Faustian bargain for Kody and Robyn, trading their last shred of dignity for a production company-funded reprieve from the bank. It would make for compelling television, but it would also mark the final transformation of the Brown family from a family that happens to be on television into a group of individuals whose lives are entirely dependent on and controlled by the network that films them. Let's imagine the scenes. Kody and Robyn meeting with bankruptcy lawyers, tense, tearful arguments about what to sell and what to keep. The physical process of packing up the Shira chateau as eviction looms. The reactions of the adult children as they learn that their family home is being repossessed. The uncomfortable phone calls to Janelle and Meri, perhaps even asking for a bailout, only to be met with a firm and final no. This is the reality they are facing. The story is no longer about the principle of plural marriage. It is about the principle and interest of a defaulted loan. The spiritual stakes have been replaced by financial stakes, and the drama is no longer about hurt feelings, but about cold hard cash. In conclusion, the document filed in the Coconino County Recorder's Office is more than just a notice of default. It is a death certificate for the Kody Brown patriarchal myth. It is the final piece of evidence proving that the family's financial structure was a house of cards, built on a foundation of secrecy and favoritism. The $250,000 question is no longer how they will build on Coyote Pass, but how they will survive the financial storm they have created. The mansion on the hill, which was meant to be Robyn's fairy tale castle, has become a prison of debt, and the foreclosure notice is the key that will unlock its doors, for better or for worse. The reckoning is here. The days of funding a lavish lifestyle on the back of a fractured family are over. The bank has come to collect, and for Kody and Robyn Brown, there is nowhere left to hide. The entire facade is about to come crashing down for the whole world to see. Let us now venture deeper into this web of financial deceit, because the notice of default is not merely the end of the story, it is the key that unlocks the secrets of the past several years. To truly grasp the magnitude of Kody and Robyn's betrayal, we must re-examine the single biggest point of contention in the Brown family's modern history, Coyote Pass. That dusty, undeveloped plot of land was meant to be their promised land, the physical manifestation of their family's eternal covenant. It was the dream Kody sold to his wives to convince them to uproot their lives in Las Vegas and move to the financially punishing high desert of Flagstaff. For years, every single financial discussion, every argument, every tear shed over money has been framed by the looming imperative of paying off and building on Coyote Pass. Our investigation has uncovered what might be the most cynical and devastating secret of all, an exclusive theory that, if true, recasts Kody Brown not just as a financial incompetent, but as a master manipulator of his own family. Let's look at the numbers again. The HELOC was for $250,000. Now think back to the countless on-screen conversations. What was the approximate amount that was always cited as the remaining balance owed on the Coyote Pass land? The figures varied slightly, but they always hovered in the low six figures, in the range of $150,000 to $200,000. And what was the estimated cost to bring in basic utilities, water, sewer, and electricity, to the property, a prerequisite before a single foundation could be poured? Again, estimates pointed to a figure in the realm of another $100,000 or more. The total amount needed to make the Coyote Pass dream a reality was almost to the dollar, the exact amount of the home equity line of credit Kody and Robyn took out. Is this a coincidence? Our sources think not. An explosive new theory emerging from those close to the family's business dealings suggests the HELOC was not originally intended for luxury goods and lifestyle maintenance. The theory is that the loan was sold to the bank, and perhaps even initially to Kody himself, as a way to finally solve the Coyote Pass problem. By leveraging the exploding equity in their own home, they could access the capital needed to pay off the land in full and begin development. This would have been a seemingly heroic move by the patriarch. He would be the one to finally deliver on the promise, using his and Robyn's primary asset as the tool to build the family's future. It would have been the ultimate power play, positioning him as the family's savior. But what happened to the money? The land remains unpaid. The utilities have not been installed. Janelle's RV sits on a patch of dirt with no running water. The $250,000 appears to have vanished, absorbed into the black hole of Kody and Robyn's personal expenses. If this theory holds, it means they took out a loan on the pretense of building the family's future, and instead spent it entirely on their own present. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most profound acts of financial betrayal imaginable within their family context. It means every time Kody raged at Janelle for not having her house paid off, every time he berated Christine for wanting her share of the money, he was potentially doing so knowing full well that he was sitting on and spending $250,000 that could have solved the very problem he was screaming about. This brings us to another critical piece of this puzzle, a specific high-ticket purchase that has long been a source of speculation among the Sister Wives viewership. We are talking about Dayton's RV. Shortly after the approximate time the HELOC was funded, Kody and Robyn's eldest son, Dayton, was suddenly in possession of a massive, late-model fifth-wheel trailer, complete with a heavy-duty truck to pull it. These are not inexpensive items. A new or late-model luxury fifth wheel of that size can easily cost upwards of $80,000 to $100,000, and the high-capacity truck required to tow it adds another $60,000 to $80,000. We are looking at a total expenditure that could easily approach $175,000. Where did this money come from? It certainly wasn't accounted for in the on-screen budget discussions. Our exclusive insider theory is that a significant portion of the HELOC funds went directly to this purchase. This wasn't just a gift for their son, it was a strategic move with multiple layers. On one hand, it was a lavish display of wealth and parental favor, setting Dayton up with a mobile home that rivaled, and in many ways surpassed, Janelle's own RV. The symbolism is impossible to ignore. While Janelle, the family's financial workhorse for decades, had to scrimp and save to afford her own modest RV to secure her future on the property, Kody and Robyn could simply write a check funded by their home's equity to provide a far more luxurious version for their son. It was a clear and public statement about which members of the family were prioritized. But there may be an even more cynical angle. What if the purchase of the RV for Dayton was also a form of asset concealment? Money spent on vacations and consumer goods disappears, but a vehicle like an RV and a truck is a tangible asset. It's an asset that is not attached to the house and, depending on how it was titled, might be seen as separate from Kody and Robyn's direct finances, especially in a bankruptcy or foreclosure scenario. It's a way of converting home equity, which the bank had a claim to, into a mobile asset that could potentially be shielded from creditors. Whether this was a conscious legal strategy or simply a happy coincidence of their profligate spending, the effect is the same. The family's collective future, represented by the equity in that house, was transformed into a private luxury vehicle for one of Robyn's children, while Janelle was left to figure out how to finance her own propane. Let's now turn the lens inward to the psychology that drives such self-destructive behavior. This financial crisis cannot be understood without understanding the personality of Kody Brown. For years, viewers have debated his behavior, with many pointing to classic traits of narcissistic personality disorder. This default is not just a financial document, it is a textbook example of what happens during a narcissistic collapse. A narcissist's entire identity is built upon a facade of success, power, and admiration. Kody's facade was that of the powerful patriarch, the leader of a grand family, the man with a vision. When Christine left, she dealt a massive blow to that facade. She didn't just leave a marriage, she publicly rejected his leadership and exposed him as a failure in his role. This was a profound narcissistic injury. Then Janelle left, followed by Meri. His kingdom crumbled and his supply of admiration and control was cut off. A narcissist in collapse will do anything to maintain the illusion of their own grandeur. This is where the HELOC comes in. As his income streams from the other wives dried up and his authority vanished, the loan offered a quick fix, a massive infusion of cash that allowed him to continue playing the role of the big man, the provider, the one in charge. It allowed him and Robyn to maintain their standard of living, to continue the spending, and to project an image of success to the world, even as their reality was imploding. The spending wasn't just about enjoying nice things. It was a desperate attempt to medicate the deep wound to his ego. He needed to prove, mostly to himself, that he was still the king, even if his castle was now built on a foundation of unsustainable debt. The default represents the moment when the fantasy collided with reality. The bank, unlike his family members, cannot be emotionally manipulated, gaslit, or intimidated. The bank only deals in numbers, and Kody's numbers no longer added up. His failure to make the payments is a public admission of the very thing he fears most, that without the support of the women he drove away, he is nothing. He is not a king. He is a man in default. And what of Robyn's role in this psychological drama? Her narrative of rental trauma and her desperate need for a permanent home must be re-examined. An insider theory gaining currency is that this narrative was less about past trauma and more about a present-day control strategy. By positioning herself as fragile, anxious, and perpetually on the verge of a breakdown over housing instability, she created a situation where Kody felt compelled to prioritize her needs above all others. Her tears were a powerful tool of manipulation. The acquisition of the million-dollar home was the ultimate fulfillment of this strategy. It was her fortress, the place where she would finally be safe, and more importantly, where she would be the undisputed queen. The other wives could have their dusty plots of land. She had the mansion. This strategy, however, had a fatal flaw. It required a constant flow of resources to maintain. When Christine and Janelle left, they took their income with them, and the financial foundation of Robyn's fortress began to crack. The HELOC was a desperate attempt to shore up the walls, to keep the fantasy of the secure, perfect life alive. She wasn't seeking security from the trauma of renting. She was seeking to maintain a level of material comfort that the family could no longer afford. The notice of default is the ultimate failure of this strategy. The very home that was meant to be her symbol of permanent security has become the source of her greatest instability, proving that true security is not found in a big house, but in financial solvency and responsible partnership, two things that appear to be utterly absent in her marriage to Kody. The ripple effects of this will cascade through the entire Brown family tree, especially among the adult children. Think of Logan, Hunter, Garrison, Gabe, and Savannah. They have watched their father prioritize his new family for years. They have seen their mother, Janelle, live in an RV on an undeveloped piece of land, while their father and his fourth wife lived in a mansion. Now they will learn that not only was their mother's dream deferred, but the money that could have built it was secretly borrowed and squandered, leading to a potential foreclosure. The anger and resentment, already simmering, are likely to boil over into a full-blown inferno. This news will destroy any lingering shred of respect they may have had for their father's financial leadership. It proves that their long-held suspicions were correct. They and their mother were always secondary, their futures expendable in the service of Robyn's present. And what about Christine's children? Mykelti, Aspen, Pedon, Gwendolyn, Isabel, and Truly. They are now part of a new, stable family structure with David Woolley. This news will serve as a stark and disturbing reminder of the chaos they left behind. Mykelti, who has tried to maintain a relationship with Kody and Robyn, will be in a particularly difficult position. How can she defend a father and stepmother who have been so reckless, not only with their own finances, but with the emotional and financial well-being of the minor children still living in that home? It will force a painful reckoning for all the adult children, a realization that the family they grew up in was built on a lie, propped up by the sacrifices of their mothers, only to be dismantled and bankrupted by their father's ego and his favored wife's desires. We are now receiving insider reports about the immediate aftermath of this news breaking within the family and the production company. A source close to production has told COCO Gossip that TLC executives were blindsided by the official filing of the notice of default. While they were aware of Kody and Robyn's financial struggles, they did not realize the situation was this dire or that foreclosure was imminent. An emergency virtual meeting was reportedly held between network executives and the show's producers to discuss the narrative implications and legal exposure. The network is now in a mad scramble. Do they intervene? Do they offer a financial package to cure the default in exchange for unfettered access to film the crisis? Or do they let the foreclosure proceed and document the downfall as it happens? The source claims the sentiment is split. Some executives fear the brand damage of their flagship family becoming homeless due to financial mismanagement, while others see this as a potential ratings bonanza, the most dramatic and authentic storyline in the show's history. The source states, quote, "This is their skindoval. They know the public will be absolutely riveted by this train wreck. The question is whether they want to be seen as the ones who could have stopped it but chose not to." Furthermore, we are getting local reports from Flagstaff, a COCO Gossip viewer, who wishes to remain anonymous, reported seeing Kody and Robyn in the parking lot of a local grocery store last week, engaged in what appeared to be a very heated and emotional argument inside their vehicle. The source couldn't hear the words, but described Kody as visibly agitated and gesticulating wildly, while Robyn appeared to be sobbing uncontrollably. While this is just an anecdotal report, it paints a picture of a couple under immense pressure. the cracks in their united front beginning to show as the financial walls close in. The private stress is now spilling out into public view. To add another layer to this, Janelle Brown recently made a social media post that the fan community is interpreting as a direct response to the crisis. She posted a simple, uncaptioned picture of a sunrise over a desert landscape, but the day before she had shared a quote on her story that read, "You can't plant seeds of chaos and expect to harvest a garden of peace. The universe always collects its debts." To the thousands of fans who have followed her journey, the timing and the message were unmistakable. This was Janelle, the pragmatic accountant, the woman who had warned of this very outcome for years, calmly watching the sun rise on a new day, having finally escaped the chaos just as the debt collectors arrived at Kody's door. So, where do they go from here? The 90-day clock is ticking. Their options are dwindling. A short sale of the home seems like the most plausible, albeit humiliating, escape route. But this would leave them with no home and no assets, forced to find a rental in an expensive market with a credit score that has been nuked from orbit. Could they move into Dayton's RV? The irony would be almost poetic. The very luxury item that may have contributed to their downfall could become their only shelter. Kody Brown, the patriarch who dreamed of a compound with 4 homes, could be reduced to living in a trailer in his stepson's driveway. The final and perhaps most critical question is what this means for the 5 minor children at the center of the storm. Solomon and Ariella are Kody's youngest biological children. Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna are the children he adopted and swore to protect. These 5 children are facing the very real prospect of losing their home, their stability, and their sense of security. The on-screen narrative has always been that every decision, every sacrifice was for the sake of the children. This foreclosure proceeding exposes that as the most hollow of all their justifications. This crisis was not created for the children, it was created at their expense. Their emotional and psychological well-being has been gambled away in a high-stakes bet on a lifestyle their parents could not afford. This is the ultimate tragedy of the Kody and Robyn Brown story. In their single-minded pursuit of their own perfect little kingdom, they have risked making their own children homeless. The foreclosure watch is not just about a house or a loan. It's about the final, catastrophic failure of a family and the patriarch who led them to the brink. The whole world is watching to see if they will fall,